Families flee amid new Israeli evacuation orders in Gaza as ceasefire hopes fade. On Sunday night, Israel issued new evacuation orders for the central Gaza Strip, specifically targeting the area around Deir Al-Balah. This decision has forced tens of thousands of families to flee their homes once again, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian situation. These orders, part of Israel's ongoing military operations against Hamas and other militant groups in Gaza, have sparked widespread concern among Palestinians, international organizations, and relief agencies. The Deir Al-Balah municipality reported that 250,000 people have been displaced due to the latest evacuation orders. As the conflict rages on, humanitarian zones in Gaza are shrinking, and safe areas are becoming increasingly scarce. The United Nations and various relief organizations have raised alarms over the rapidly deteriorating conditions for civilians trapped in the conflict zone. Increasing casualties and displacement Israeli airstrikes continued on Monday, killing at least 7 Palestinians, according to local medical sources. 2 people were killed in Deir al-Balah, where approximately 1 million people had sought refuge. Additional casualties were reported at a school in the Al-Nusrat camp and in the southern city of Rafah, near the Egyptian border. The ongoing bombardment has forced many families and patients to evacuate Al-Aqsa Hospital, the primary medical facility in Deir al-Balah. The hospital had been a sanctuary for hundreds of thousands of residents and displaced people, but its proximity to the targeted area has made it unsafe. Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, issued a statement late Sunday, highlighting the panic caused by an explosion just 250 meters away from the MSF-supported hospital. The organization is now considering suspending wound care, despite the critical need for medical services in the area. Al-Aqsa has been operating well beyond capacity for weeks due to the lack of alternatives for patients, MSF said in its statement. All warring parties must respect the hospital, as well as patients' access to medical care. The hospital, which had been treating around 650 patients, is now down to just 100, with 7 in intensive care. The forced evacuations and continued airstrikes have made it increasingly difficult for medical staff to provide the necessary care for those who remain. Humanitarian crisis deepens. The human cost of the conflict is starkly illustrated by the story of Sawazan Abu Afesh, a mother who has been displaced 11 times since the war began. I left half of my children behind me near my furniture, and I am now with my little ones and my daughter. Only God can help us, she said. I have no money for transportation. I will go to Area 17 where my family is staying on foot. I took my kids and 3 are left behind. No idea where. Such stories are becoming increasingly common as the conflict drags on with no end in sight. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is worsening, with acute shortages of food, medicine, and shelter for the 2.3 million people in the enclave. According to Gaza's health ministry, more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war began, and most of the population has been displaced multiple times. Stalled diplomatic efforts. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts to end the conflict have reached an impasse. Qatar, Egypt, and the United States have been leading mediation efforts, but so far, these have failed to bridge the gap between Israel and Hamas. Neither side has agreed to the compromises proposed during talks in Cairo on Sunday, according to Egyptian security sources. Despite these setbacks, a senior U.S. official described the talks as constructive and said they were conducted in a spirit of seeking a final and implementable agreement. However, Hamas officials have rejected new conditions set by Israel during the talks, which the group did not attend. Osama Hamdan, a senior Hamas official, dismissed U.S. claims of an imminent ceasefire as false and politically motivated, aimed at bolstering President Joe Biden's administration ahead of November elections. The conflict, now in its 10th month, began on October 7th with a surprise attack by Hamas on Israel that killed 1,200 people and resulted in over 250 hostages being taken, according to Israeli reports. The subsequent Israeli military response has devastated Gaza, leaving much of the territory in ruins and its people in desperate need of aid. As the war grinds on, the prospects for a ceasefire appear increasingly remote, with both sides digging in and showing little willingness to compromise. For the millions of civilians caught in the crossfire, the situation grows more perilous by the day, with no clear end in sight.